The rule of law, as a universally acclaimed recognition of the supremacy of law and the government of human affairs, has gone through an interesting transformation in Nigeria since President Muhammadu Buhari was sworn in for the first time on May the 29th, 2015. A few years ago, at the opening of the Nigerian Bar Association annual conference, President Buhari declared to him that national interest will always trump the rule of law, and by saying so, unwittingly provided ammunition to those who felt that it was an accident waiting to happen in the Constitution of Nigeria. To what extent have those critics, many of them lawyers, been proven right? In a few days, the Nigerian Bar Association will be holding elections to choose a president, and once again, a number of candidates are running on the premise of giving the rule of law its rightful place if truly elected. For a conversation around this, we're now being joined by Dele Adesina, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and one of the top lawyers vying for the presidency of the Nigerian Bar Association. In the course of this chat, we should expect Mr. Adesina, SAN, to tell us about what he intends to bring to the table and what is expected of the umbrella body of the Nigerian lawyers in a collective effort to protect and preserve the fundamental freedoms of the citizens. Welcome to the program. It's a pleasure having you, Mr. Adesina.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Real quickly, I'd like to know your take on this, and I'd like to know, because this is like a campaign platform for you, what you are going to do as regards lawyers taking up cases with a high level of frivolities. We've seen that all around. We've seen a lot of ex partes here and there, and we've seen constant calls by people, by the NJC, to call the lawyers to order. What would you do as regards that? What would you do differently?
Well, thank you very much for this question. The greatest appraisal in the world is what I call self-appraisal. And the time has come for the legal profession to do a critical self-appraisal of the profession as well as the members that make up the profession. We have two departments. We have the bench, which I refer to as the anointed institution, ordinarily. We also have the bar, which are the legal practitioners, the advocates, and the solicitors. This is a profession with a very strict professional code of conduct. And I believe that the time has come to reinvigorate the application and the enforcement of that code of conduct. The legal profession is not a rudderless profession. It is an ordered profession. It is a honorable profession. Having made this general background statement, let me say that, yes, frivolous cases should not be taken to court. But permit me to say that there is a limit beyond which the lawyer must not go. It is the duty of the court to decide what is frivolous and what is not. That's number one. Number two, there are instances where lawyers will sit down with a client and tell the client that, excuse me, I've listened to your facts. Come back in 2 days' time, in 3 days' time, and let us review it. Within those 2-3 days, the lawyer would have consulted his law books and then come to an informed decision. And when the client comes, the lawyer tells the client to say, look, I've looked, I have reviewed your facts. I've also looked at the state of the law. This case is not worth being taken to court for 1, 2, 3, 4 reasons. And some clients will insist that you are not the judge. I want this matter ventilated in court. If I'm going to lose, let the court tell me that I have lost. I would not like to call them recalcitrant clients, but clients that are insisting on their rights being determined by the court of law. We have that category. It is true we also have a few of us, but I want to let you know that they are in the minority. They are not in the majority. We have a few of us that will say, don't worry, we'll see what can be done. I will take this matter to court. Let me draw a very great reference, or a quick reference, to one of the code of conduct. The rule says that a lawyer must not urge on the court a defense he does not believe in. Every lawyer is aware of this. And therefore, there are things we must do, there are things we must not do. But we cannot put the blame squarely on the table of the lawyers alone. We must also put it on the table of the litigants, some of whom will not take the advice of the lawyer for it until they get to court. That is number one. On the other side of the department is the bench, which I call the anointed institution. The judges are representatives of God on earth. They swear to an oath to deliver judgments, rulings, and orders without fear or favor, affection, or ill will. They have to stand by their oath without any intimidation from anybody, not even from the lawyer, and not even from the litigants themselves. They have to interpret the law the way they understand it, to the best of their ability. There is an inherent mechanism in the system whereby if an order is given by a court of first instance and you do not agree, or there are conflicting orders from two courts or more courts of coordinate jurisdiction, there is what to do. It is not in attacking the judges. It is not in blaming the judges. They should allow the system to sort out its problem. You take those orders to the Court of Appeal. Where we have over 200 high courts in Nigeria, we have just about 20 divisions of the Court of Appeal. And where the conflicts are not resolved by the Court of Appeal, we have the Apex Court, who are eminently positioned by the law and the Constitution to resolve the conflicts. We must allow the system to run. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Adesina, very good points there about how every lawyer should be an officer in the temple of justice.
That's right.
Right. But you've made very good points about code of conduct. I would like you to tell us what exactly your program is for the NBA beyond code of conduct. And then, of course, your opponents, they accuse you of being a perennial candidate. I would like you to respond to that. And the argument is that you've been General Secretary of the NBA at the federal level. You have been chairman of the NBA Lagos branch. And this is about the third time you are running for president. And they've been telling people to ask you, what is your motivation? What exactly do you want to do?
Thank you very much. I want to say, with all sense of responsibility, that if you know you can do something better, and you fail to offer yourself to do it, you are to blame. You cannot blame the institution. Those who have made these statements really do not appreciate that no matter how well educated you are, no matter the skill that you have, it can never equal experience. Experience, they say, is the best teacher. And that is what I have to offer, which none of the other candidates who are saying what you have just repeated now, sir, do not have. Now, as General Secretary of the Bar, the Nigerian lawyers know that I made a very positive impact and I added value. I know very well that there were lawyers at that time, which is the present situation now, who were asking, if I'm not a member of the Nigerian Bar Association, what do I lose? And that itself is a failure of the system. And I told them that I will give them value for their membership. And that we did in the executive, in which I had the privilege of serving as General Secretary of the Bar. Coming to the problem today, is this the Nigerian Bar Association we used to have in the past? How have we defended the rule of law within the last couple of years? 6 years, 7 years to this time. There was a time Nigerian Bar Association was the leading association in this country, aggregating and pulling other professional bodies together, giving directions and constructive engagements to government, insisting that rule of law must be obeyed, that orders must be obeyed, judgments must be obeyed. How much of that are we doing today? What are we doing about our corporate responsibility to the society? Lawyers are nation builders. The legal profession is not just about bread and butter, making money from the system and living fat. No. It is a profession that must advance for the betterment of the society. Within the last 6 and 7 years, how much have we been able to discharge that responsibility? This is why I'm involved. An ordinary man on the street today, if they make 10 statements about the bar, about the legal profession, 7 out of that 10 is negative. It's either they tell you the lawyers are part of the problems in Nigeria, or the judges are corrupt. All these negative perceptions. And let me tell you, perception can be worse than reality if nothing is done about it. I want to reverse that perception. I want to let the public know that there are decent lawyers in this country who are practicing by the rules. There are decent judges in this country who are dispensing justice according to their out of office. And that the legal profession can rise again to defend the rule of law, to advance the societal values and virtues. This is why I'm involved. They said 3 years. 3 times. That is not true. In 2008, as a humble person who does not fight for anything by force, who believes in sanity of the system, who believe in the honor and integrity of the system, some people approached me after indicating my interest in 2008 that 2 of you want to run this association. To run for the leadership of the association. Look, it is an office for service. There is no return, there is no salary, there is no whatever. Why must you spend colossal resources because you want to be the president of your association? Other professions don't do it. I saw great wisdom in this argument. And I asked the other gentleman who was my senior to go. He became president unopposed. The association was united by reason of that sacrifice that I made. In 2014, about 4 or 5 of us ran for the office. Nobody was ready to concede for the other. And the association was the worst for it. In everything, in implementation, in policies, in execution of those policies, the association was the worst for it. In 2016 and 2018, the fight for the association's leadership was so intense that the election of those 2 years ended up in court. Is that a plus for the association or a minus to the reputation, to the integrity, to the honor of the association? I will tell you it is not a honor. I'm not aware of any other profession where to get to their leadership is fight to finish. I don't do that. If I offer myself and they say, come, we buy you, I will serve them. If they say no, I will go back to Dele Adesina and Co. It's very easy, it's very simple. And I think every lawyer of honor and value must imbibe that quality. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, obviously, we know that lawyers don't make the laws, legislators do. But how do you plan to make the NBA into a powerful lobbying organization and really create reform? How do you plan to capture the zeitgeist in your presidency? Look at what has happened in the wake of COVID-19, the increase in domestic violence and rape cases. We also have police brutality on the front burner, and the perennial issue, I am afraid to say, of the government's reluctance at times to actually obey court orders. We have in a democracy today, which is supposed to be practicing the rule of law, somebody like Dele Adesina that has vanished from his home, has not been seen for almost a year. It will be a year in August. How does the NBA plan to tackle this kind of thing, or how would you tackle this as a president of the NBA?
I'm afraid you have rolled so many questions into one that I'm not sure I'll be able to recap.
I can help you. I'm asking you based on topical issues.
Yes.
If you plan to capture the zeitgeist, let's start with the domestic violence and rape cases that seem to have spiked in COVID-19, and it's also related to the police brutality that seems to have spiked during this pandemic.
Thank you very much. The issue of sexual violence and police brutality are very dangerous issues. They are products of the, do I say, the unenviable situation that we have. Sexual violence is an offense. It's not permitted. It shouldn't be permitted in an ordered society. And when it happens, the police must live up to their bidding to do a thorough investigation, ensure the offenders are arrested, and promptly charged to court, dealt with, and sanctioned. The first problem we have is lack of effective enforcement of our laws. When people know that if they commit an offense, they will be arrested and they will go for it, they will be very careful. Sanction itself is one of the reasons for deterrent. It deters people from committing offenses. So we have to strengthen our law enforcement. We have to strengthen our punishment against offenders. Police brutality, there can be no justification for it. Police is involved in maintenance of law and order, in prevention of crime. Section 4 of the Police Act is very clear. And the lawyers are partners. They should be partners with the police in the enforcement of our law and order. So there should be no incidents of police brutality. And the Nigerian Bar Association must be able to engage the hierarchy, the topmost hierarchy of the police, to say, let us sit down and reason together. We are not enemies of each other. We are not contesting against each other. We are partners in progress. Let us collaborate to enforce our laws. Ordinary road traffic law, how many people obey it in Nigeria? Traffic law. You see people driving at wrong sides of the road. You see people not giving opportunity to anybody that wants to change the lane. Discipline is at the highest level. That is number two. Number three, there must be a strategic alliance between the Nigerian Bar Association and authorities or bodies like International Federation of Women Lawyers, FIDA, and then the Women Forum of the Nigerian Bar Association, to really undertake enlightenment programs, education of our people. Simple education like, Mr. Man, you and your wife are supposed to be one person, one body. When you beat that woman, you are beating yourself. Only a madman beats himself. Can you understand? So, it will entail enhancement of education, enlightenment campaigns, enforcement of our laws, and so on and so forth. Let me add this point. No reason can justify sexual violence. No reason at all. But I must add that the devil will find work for idle hands. We must sit down and create employment opportunities for the youth of this today, of this country. When we match employment with enforcement by the police, including increasing the number of the police force, I am not aware if we have up to 500,000 policemen in Nigeria, policing 200 million people. That number is not adequate. We need to recruit, let's go ahead and recruit quality people to join the police force, provide equipment for them, train them regularly, and law enforcement will be enhanced. Some of these problems will be addressed.
Now, Mr. Adesina, the second half of my question was about advocating and lobbying for the rule of law in itself. It's not some abstract concept. The reality, or as it ought to be, the reality of our equality before the law is key. And it actually costs us money. You talked about unemployment just now. It costs us money because investors are not going to come into a territory where you cannot enforce your contracts, for example. What are you planning to do with regards to lobbying for that? Because the government picks and chooses what court orders they will obey and which ones they won't. We have in a democracy journalists being arrested, like the gentleman that I mentioned, Dele Adesina, who has been missing for will be 1 year in August. We hope it does not make that anniversary. What is your plan for that?
I will start with the last question, and that is the example you gave about a journalist that was arrested and obedience to court order generally. You don't talk about rule of law when court orders and judgments are disobeyed. One of the fundamental ingredients of rule of law is obedience to court orders and judgment. That is what shows respect to the courts. That is what, determines the capacity of the court. It is not in disobeying them. And if we know that this is an important ingredient of the rule of law, and we know that we don't talk about democracy without talking about rule of law, then we will know what to do. If we want to practice democracy, we must practice democracy. If it is not Panadol, it can never do the same thing as Panadol, according to that advert. Obedience of the rule of law, the defense and protection of rule of law in all its ramifications, they are very key. The lawyers must insist on their independence. The judges must resist any interference on their independence. All these are ingredients of the rule of law. And I want to recap, and that's why I talked about experience earlier. Not once, not twice in this country have Nigerian Bar Association championed the cause to get military dictatorship to obey rule of law in this country. 1992, 1991, 1987, 1989 were all cases. Some of these were documented in books. There was a book written by a friend, Ayola Rewaju of Ganifa and Miss Chambers before. He wrote a book on the experience of the Nigerian Bar Association in fighting for rule of law in 1992, when court orders were serially disobeyed by military dictatorship. And the Nigerian Bar Association says, no, it will not stand. Due to the action taken by the NBA at that time, the government obeyed each and every one of those orders. At that time, about 5 citizens of this country were arrested and detained under the draconian Decree 2. Mr. Femi Falana, I'm sorry to mention names, Chief Ganifa Oemi, the leadership of the National Union of Nigerian Students, Segun Mayegun, Dr. Bekor and some Kuti, a pro-democracy leadership. The Yoruba people will say that only liars will tell you that his witnesses are in heaven. When you are telling the truth, you name your witnesses. That's why I mentioned those names. Orders for their release were granted and by the court, and the military dictatorship disobeyed those orders. And the NBA said, no, you must obey them. One thing led to the other. The lawyers withdrew their services. The government went to court. The lawyers won. The government had no option than to obey the orders. So, NBA has done it before, and I speak for them, they can do it again. Now, on how can NBA lobby to ensure that, that functional laws are made, and so on and so forth. Again, this is a matter of experience and continuity. It is an issue of historical, facts, which unfortunately some people do not remember. Between 2012 and 2014, we had a very robust Rule of Law Action Group as a committee of Nigerian Bar Association. 2014 to now is about 6 years. What has happened? Why I say there's no continuity? Now, also, we used to have very active legislative advocacy group as a committee of Nigerian Bar Association. They are to liaise with the National Assembly, including even state houses of assembly, to impact positively on the making of laws. All these appear to have been lost to history. Only those who have information can do things right. Okay. Without information, you don't have a working tool.
Okay, so real quickly, you're going to bring all of this back in just about 1 minute. Because all of this you said about rule of law is good. But let's not forget that the lawyers, too, have a role in all of this. Sure. So I want you to make a clear distinction between the rule of law and the rule of lawyers for me. in less than 1 minute. The rule of law and the rule of lawyers, because it looks as though there's a reign of the rule of lawyers, not the rule of law now.
If I pretend to understand your question about rule of lawyers, I think you are addressing the point of lawyers conforming with the rules themselves. Is that so?
Yeah.
Good. I started by saying that we are not a rudderless society. The lawyers are strictly guided by their rules. And there are instances where lawyers have been sanctioned by the code of conduct. Under the code of conduct. We have a functional legal practitioners disciplinary committee where petitions are taken to them against any lawyer. The petitions are dealt with fair and straight. Lawyers have been sanctioned. Senior advocates of Nigeria have had their title withdrawn. Lawyers have been derobed completely, their names completely taken out of the rolls. But the society must also play their role. If a lawyer has done something wrong to you, petition the Bar Association, petition the Legal Practitioner Disciplinary Committee, and they will take actions. The problem is that in the past...
Mr. Adesina,
yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt you. I think there's something important that I would like you to address. What do you intend to do to address the welfare of lawyers? Quickly. We have just about 20 seconds, 30 seconds.
Well, thank you very much. That is a matter that is very, very key to my heart. The welfare of lawyers, very key.
Particularly the young ones.
Yes, both the young ones and the senior ones. A good number of the young ones are on the street looking for job to do. A good number of them are hopelessly roaming about. They have become victims of a situation they did not create. The leadership exists to create value, to create opportunities for the followership. I've belonged to an executive that created value before, and I can do it again, where we create employment for our young lawyers.
Well, thank you very much.